In a time when truth is increasingly rare and courage even more so, we are honored to bring you a conversation today with a man who has stood at the crossroads of both. Today, we are joined by Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, a 3-star general with over 33 years of service in the United States Army, former Director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, and former National Security Advisor to President Trump. General Flynn's story is one of both service and sacrifice, not just on the battlefield, but in the corridors of power in Washington. In 2017, he became one of the first targets in what would become a widespread campaign against the Trump administration. Why? He threatened to expose what many insiders feared most, the labyrinth of black budget operations and unauthorized financial channels within our intelligence agencies. His appointment as National Security Advisor posed a direct threat to those who had operated in the shadows for decades, leading to one of the most aggressive political targeting campaigns in modern American history. So, General Michael Flynn, thank you very much for taking the time to join us today.
Absolutely.
Definitely an honor and a privilege to be able to sit across from you and talk and pick your brain on some questions that I know our community certainly has. And before we get into those questions, I wanted to give you an opportunity to expand on some stuff I heard in your movie Flynn, when you were talking about your love of the ocean and your love of surfing. And I did not really picture in my mind.
Did you expect that when you saw that?
I did not expect that at all. But it was not so much the fact that you said that you just were into surfing. It was more of how you saw it, that you made the comment that it was spiritual.
Right.
And I was wondering if you could expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, so first of all, our family grew up around the ocean. And so, I mean, it's like been a part of, I'm one of 9 brothers and sisters, has been a part of our lives for as long as I can remember. So surfing as a sport, we never really looked at it like it was like a sport, like where I played football, basketball, baseball on sports teams. We looked at surfing as a way of life, and it's not how you ride the wave, or it's not the wave that you ride. It's how you ride the wave, kind of the way sort of life goes too. So it's very, very spiritual when you're out surfing, especially in big surf where you can you're risking your life at times based on some of the challenges that you can face. Anybody that's ever surfed would understand that you're out there kind of, maybe you paddle out with somebody, but you're out there on your own. And if you're kind of like the way I was, that's a time where you're like reflecting. You would pray. I always say a prayer before I head out into the sets. And then when you get out there, you just kind of sit. And whether it's like freezing cold, a blizzard, or it's beautiful sun with Mother Nature, flowing in, it's an experience that for those that have surfed for a long time, and I'm talking about now in my life, I'm about to turn 66 here in a couple of days. I've been surfing since I was about probably 6-7 years old. So I owned a surfboard when I was 6 years old. And it was the first time I'd ever surfed a little tiny surfboard. And today I still own probably half a dozen surfboards, and I still go out surfing. So it's like an experience for me. Yeah, there's all the working out side of it and all that, the physicality, but it's really going out there. Even if I went out and surfed today, because it's a little bit harder for me, I would go out and sit out there for an hour, 2 hours. Maybe I'd catch 1 or 2 waves. But the spiritual nature of just sitting out there in the ocean, reflecting on everything, it's something that you cannot imagine unless you've been out there and done that.
Is that what is, informed or driven your way of handling your life's challenges?
Oh yeah, big time. In a lot of ways, because of the way that it causes you to reflect on all of the challenges that you're going to face, because when you come back from the ocean, right, and the whole thing about water is life, right? So when you think about water, I mean the spiritual nature of water, we get baptized with water, you get, you can become born again in some river or at some beach. I've seen those types of things in my life, So you a lot of that stuff that occurred in my life, and as I continued on from the time I was a child all the way through even till today, surfing is a way of life. And for those of us that have been drawn to that, it's a connection. And throughout my military career, I actually connected with an awful lot of people that when they learned about the fact that I surfed, it's a very funny, it's a small community of people. But actually in the military, there's quite a few people. There's more than you would think that have experienced that. And it's not just the physicality of it. It's the spiritual nature of paddling out, thinking about everything that's going on around in your life, and then focusing everything on something that could actually kill you at that moment versus going out and playing, 5-on-5 in or 2-on-2 in a basketball in some park, or going out and playing some softball, or I played football, other sports, hockey, running, bicycling. Surfing is a totally different aspect of physicality, and especially when you're talking about when you go out and surf in big waves.
So you said it was a living organism, the ocean, and you were part of it. So do you view it as channeling in being one with the water and moving with it, as opposed to more of a strategic game, or?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's all of that. I think it's all of that. I mean, I think it's a very natural part of who we are, because again, it's the ocean, right? And the ocean dominates the world. Man trying to always stand up against Mother Nature, right? And I think that I've jumped out of airplanes a lot. I've done a lot of different things. I've jumped off of cliffs, bridges. I've risked different things. But the blending of who you are and then challenging the ocean is much different. I've surfed and I've been completely knocked out. Floated to the surface. Had to been pulled out of the ocean, right? Gotten, do you go back out? I mean, and it was like, so that challenge, when you challenge the ocean, I'm not talking about, the fun days of going out and surfing in, 3 or 4 foot surf. I'm talking about going out and really challenging the ocean and looking at places like surf breaks and going, oh my God, I'm going to go out, I'm going to paddle out in that. And it's immense. And you're like, it is going to challenge you to the degree that you probably have never, ever felt in your life. And I've taken people out who have never surfed before, because they go, I got to go out and I got to try it, because they're athletic. And they get out there and they're just, I would say, I would always tell them, can you swim? How long can you hold your breath? I would train when I surfed quite a bit, and I lived in Hawaii when one of my assignments was 25th Infantry Division. So I would actually train to stay down below the water for at least a minute. That's a long time. You hold your breath for a minute. Now there's guys that can hold their breath for 2 minutes, 4 minutes. It's one of those things where when you lose to it, okay, like if you're able to champion a wave and you get unbelievable a feeling, you're like, wow. But then when you lose to it, you have to succumb to it. Right, and that's hard to understand. But when you're forced down underneath the ocean, and you don't have any control, you're totally out of control. But you still got an attachment to a surfboard through your shock cord, and you're like, no control. You better then take control of that moment, and I've said prayers at that moment.
Well, it's definitely served you well. I think facing the ocean is a great metaphor for the last several years that we have come through. We're now on the backside of that. I just watched the Flynn movie again. I watched it back over the summer when you first released it, and I knew you were coming here, so I wanted to definitely check it out. I definitely encourage everybody. I
think everybody going into the government right now ought to watch it. Honestly, if people watch it, they'll understand what is going on right now. It's going on right now. Again, we're going through it again.
Well, that's really what I'm interested in talking to you about. You found yourself alone in the ocean, and the simple way I can put it is that you were the poster boy for being someone that is a threat to the status quo, and how that establishment that is the status quo deals with that.
Yeah, I mean, people need to understand that the level, when you get to that level, right, and I'm talking about a very serious senior level of government official, and it's like what we're seeing right now. So for your audience and for everybody that watches this and whatever, and clips of it or these next few weeks, the dirt that's being dredged out of every single person's life, right? So, there's no dirt on Mike Flynn. I mean, I got to certain levels of a career, great military career. I'm out with, helping a guy win the presidency of the United States of America. I grew up in an era, and we won't get into all the different 60s and 70s and early 80s, but, and there's nothing there. So everything had to be created or made up, right? So because if you're not owned by the establishment or, the quote unquote deep state, which is principally the CIA, it's not, there's a bureaucratic underlings, but it's really the CIA is probably the essence of the deep state, and their methods of controlling people are very clear, and I think a lot of people have learned that more and more in the last probably, these last 8 years. But they didn't have anything, so there was nothing there on Mike Flynn. What do we got on Mike Flynn, right? And I don't say that like to pat myself on the back that I'm, this perfect person. I'm not a Boy Scout. I'm very imperfect, but I have a purpose, and my purpose in life has always been service. And I was born on an Army base. My father's retired as a sergeant out of the Army, World War II, Korea War vet. Both my grandfathers were served, World War I, World War II. I got my son still serving. So I mean, my life has been a life of service, and what I firmly believe in, whether people want to believe it or not, or like it or not, I believe that this country is always at risk. And so in order for us to maintain what we have for my children and my grandchildren, for your family, all the families of the people that love the country, you have to constantly sacrifice for it. You can't just, when I hear somebody say, well, I'm retired, I'm like, what do you mean? Are you dead? Are you going to stop living? And I'm just not designed like that. And that's not in my DNA. Wasn't raised like that. Doesn't mean that you can't go and have a good time and you go play golf if you serve in the military. I got all that. But our nation is always at risk, and I saw it like nobody saw it, particularly in the latter part of my career. And I would say in the last 10 years prior to leaving the military. So the last 10 years of the wars that I was in, and a lot of your audience was probably in, Iraq, Afghanistan primarily, but I was in different, if you look at throughout my career, I saw different things, but the last 10 years of my career, so the last third of my career, I'm looking at all this and I'm going, man, this is bad. This is really bad. And I felt it in the, in the sort of the first decade of this new century, so probably the 2008 time frame, let's say 2008 to 2010 time frame. And I'm looking at all this and I'm saying, man, this is bad. So my whole purpose up to that point then, I felt like we actually could get out of the wars that we were in, if we had some decisiveness and were allowed. So now I'm going into other positions that were much more influential. So that time frame, I'm leaving a very senior position in Central Command at MacDill Air Force Base. I'm going to the Pentagon for the first time. I'm going to be the senior intelligence officer in the department in the Pentagon, the J2 for the chairman of the Joint Staff, and I'm going into a much more influential place. And now I'm like, I'm really pushing buttons now, And I ended up spending a year there, and then I went back out to Afghanistan because of the way that everything changed for the commander out in Afghanistan. And so that again changed my life. I went back out to Afghanistan for pretty much another 18 months. And I had already been out there almost 3 years. In fact, I had been out there over 3 years of my life prior to going back out for another 18 months. And so I'm like watching all this stuff unfold and unravel. And then fast forward to the departure from Afghanistan and the shitty way that we have operated in Iraq, and what we've just seen, the Assad regime fall. I mean, you kind of say to yourself, what's going on? Who's in charge of this mess? And do we have anybody that actually cares about what it's doing to our country? So when I say that Americans should be in a constant state of sacrifice, it actually is only a couple, it's a small percentage. Most people, and I want most people to just live their lives, go about their business, but to know that there are people out there that are willing to do what they're willing to do. And so you can't just go, okay, nice little pat on the head for those. That means that those people have got to figure out ways to give back to them, whether it's prayer, through their churches, through their communities, or through the encouragement of the American people. But when the government begins to turn on the American people, which is what has happened, okay? And that government started to turn on the American people, not because Donald Trump came down the escalator. It started to actually turn, probably in the mid-90s. When I look back, because I like history, when I look back at moments, I'm like, okay, I can see those moments when we started to, now I'm kind of digging more into the military side, but when I started to see the cultural movement in the country shift from one of patriotism, that being patriotic was a good thing, flying the flag was a good thing, not worrying about what, not caring too much about what your neighbors did, but, you wanted to make sure that the government wasn't too deep into your lives, all these kinds of things. So the cultural shift in this country really was in earnest, and I would say probably in the early 1990s. Now you can go back and we can have a debate about 50s, 60s, but really at that time in the military, the cultural shift there, and we all live with it. If you served in the military after 1994 time frame, we had the don't ask, don't tell policy.
That's
right? So we all accepted it and give a shit, but it was don't ask, don't tell. But that cultural, that was a purposeful, intentional assault on a culture that threatens people that want to control this country. And I think that's what people don't understand. That everybody goes, what's all this Marxism, communism, what's all this fascism, what's all this talk that we hear today? Because there is a movement in this country, because there's always an ideological underpinning of people that want this country to be other than what it was designed to be, which was a constitutional republic based on a fair rule of law where everybody's equal. Depending on your, equal doesn't mean, wealth has nothing to do with wealth. It has to do with equality. And, you can work really hard and accept, a modest lifestyle. Or you can work really hard and you can become a really wealthy person. Doesn't make any difference where you come from. But that cultural assault on our system, our way of life, has been going on for a long time. And one of the institutions that had to be taken apart was our military. And I wouldn't sit here and tell you today that I understood it then. I was a major when that happened, and we were like, okay, whatever, let's get on, right? I don't give a shit. I don't care whether somebody's purple with pink polka dots, as long as they meet a standard and they can do the job and all that in the military, right? But I think as we go forward, this constant, the DEI, all this stuff. So I'm jumping a little bit back and forth for the direction and the path that we are on right now as a nation. And what I tell people is that we are in a place now where we have one chance left. We're going to hit our 250-year mark here, and Everybody's going to celebrate. We got Trump in office if he stays alive between now and the next 33 days or so, 32 days, which is not a given. It's not a given. And so all these things matter because we have not defeated the opponent. Okay, we have not really defeated that opponent. That opponent is still fighting us, and it's not Harris and Waltz. Those are attachments to something that is much bigger and much more. It's a greater evil that we force, and I believe that. I mean, talking about all the spirituality stuff. I'm a Catholic kid. I'm the worst Catholic, but what I do know is that it's like in warfare, right? The enemy has a vote, so you constantly have to look at those kinds of things that are happening out there, and understand it's not just some enemy that you face on the battlefield, some terrorist or some conventional enemy. It's actually spiritual enemy, certainly ideological enemies. I mean, there's economic enemies. There's economic warfare going on. So all those things matter. And I think for the people that understand that, like a guy like me, what we have a responsibility. I feel a direct responsibility to do everything that I can, because I've been blessed to be given the things that I've been given, and to get to the levels that I got to, and the attacks that I received. You kind of look at them, you sort of go, okay, well, so, it's like if you're gonna have a coup, you better kill the king.
Is the threat to the Trump administration that's getting ready to come in, is that threat that you faced, is that still there? Is it more dangerous?
It's more dangerous. It's more dangerous because, in a way, they won. So in a way, Trump gets in 2017 to 2020, right? 2016 he wins a victory, 2017. So in a way, he kind of won an incremental battle, an incremental victory in this war to change America, to fundamentally change America, okay, which was stated by a former president, right? Fundamentally transform America. So he won a battle, and everybody was like, wow, this is great, right? And you saw the constant attacks. He was able to achieve some really amazing things. At the time, and I'm watching all this because I'm on the sidelines now. He was an economic president, not a wartime president. He was an economic president, and he did great things for the economy. The war, he stayed out of it, and he was smart. He's like, why do I want to get back into? I don't want to start a new war. I don't want to. But you tell me, you give me good advice, I'll do the right things. I'll go after al-Baghdadi. I'll go after Soleimani. We'll drop some bombs on ISIS camps over in Afghanistan. So they did some tactical things to keep war sort of like at this level, right? But he was an economic president, even despite all the attacks he went through. Then they come back and they regained. They beat him. Okay, now, I've been called every name in the book. That election in 2020 was a fraudulent election. So I don't care if you get banned off of YouTube or not. Okay, it was a fraudulent election, and there's no way in the world that Joe Biden, who was known at that time to have partial dementia, to have partial onset of dementia at that time. So we lost that. We lost that battle. That was a big battle. And in a way, now I'm kind of glad. Now that we've achieved where we're at, because we've been given, like, I think, sort of divine intervention, we've been given one more chance. And I do believe that. Had Trump won in 2020, I don't believe, and then, he'd be out now, right? He'd have done great things, but they would have constantly attacked him. And the exposure of this really ugly underbelly, this rot that we have in our system of government would not have been exposed. And they would have just constantly, hammered them as much as, the rise of citizen journalism, right? The rise of grunt style, okay? Because you guys haven't been around that long, right? I mean, really, when you think about it, you've created a great brand, but also you're part of you're part of something different in this country. You're part of a movement of people in this country that said, hey, enough is enough, and we're going to come together in our own ways, whether it's through veterans groups. You can't pretend to have well, we're biased on, we're going to be apolitical. Bullshit, right? If you're apolitical, that means that it's like General Grant. You're either a patriot or you're a traitor. So what camp do you want to be in? You want to be in the camp of patriots? That doesn't mean we have to agree on the battle plan. It just means that we have to agree that America is the shining city on a hill, and that the Constitution is our bedrock, right? But if you don't believe that, then that was kind of Grant's mindset, right? So if you don't believe that, then what do you believe? So you don't want to be American the way America is supposed to be, right? So there's a lot to unpackage there, but the exposure of what was created over these last 4 years by people like your organization, by people like me, by others that are out there that have been fighting tooth and nail and saying this is bad, right? The World Economic Forum, right? Our whole Reawaken America tour. I mean, I actually started to go back with my wife the other day. We were talking, and in the last 4 years, I have traveled to over 300 cities or towns in this country. For like what? To make sure that people understood that we have one more chance. And so if I did my little part, I feel good that I did what I did, because we're like talking about water. We're like this raging river. Like we're here in Western North Carolina. We're just on the outskirts of Asheville, I think, or we just visited Black Rock. You've seen where the rivers flowed, right? Well, America is like that drowning person in that river right now. And every so often for the last 4 years, we were kind of coming up. That person could swim. We were actually given, the grace of being able to stay alive and breathe every so often and then go back under. And we felt like, man, we're like a drowning man, okay, in a raging river heading towards either a wall or a waterfall or something that was going to kill us, okay? And the banks, are really, they're way, it's a wide river. So you're stuck in the middle and you're flowing really fast. So the metaphor of America, that's where America was at. And so the American people said, we got to throw ourselves a life raft, and Donald Trump is the guy. He's the guy in this moment of history. He is such a historical figure. We're not going to have another one like him. We haven't had one like him since Abraham Lincoln, and I'm not sure when the next one will be. Maybe another 100 years, maybe another 300 years, if we last as a nation. So we have this historic moment in time. Essentially, by the grace of God, a life preserver was thrown out into that person drowning, rushing down that river, and now America is hanging on. But that river's still rushing. If we don't get our shit together here in these next, I don't know, year and a half, and take the action that's necessary, the action that it will come with consequences, then I fear that we will lose the opportunity that we've been given. And I mean, the miracles that have happened to put Trump back in office, I think it's only the second president in the history of the country that's been able to come back, with a break and come back. And then, of course, by the grace of God, they tried to turn his head into a red mist, right? So anyway, we're in one of these places where we must take the opportunity. The people of this country, there's no retirement. I don't want to hear about people retiring. I don't care how old you are. I don't care what you have. Do not give up until this country is secured to at least another point in time where we can go and say, okay, I can see another 100 years of surviving. Okay, I think we can get to our 350-year anniversary as a constitutional republic. That's not guaranteed. It's not guaranteed. And if we don't have people that believe that and then are willing to go to the gates, right, and fight for it, then we will not get there.
Do you think the American appetite is there?
I think it is with a larger body of people, a larger percentage than maybe 10 years ago. And I think it's because so many people, my sort of fingertip feel of the operational environment, the sentiment of the American people is really pretty good. And I actually think that the American people finally realized that we really were at risk here.
It feels like we've woken up from a bad dream.
Hey, I mean, Donald Trump, if he lost, and I say this, to all these audiences that I'll probably say this until he, finishes, that had he lost that race, he'd be in prison right now for the rest of his life. 26, I mean, as it is, the judge that is in that case, he just moved his sentencing 4 years. Yeah. So they're not done. And that's why I say, like I said the day after the election. So I went home that night about 4 o'clock in the morning, got up, drove, sat there as I'm driving back up to my house with my wife and a couple others, and we're sitting there and I'm thinking, okay, so what happened, right? Because it's never about the moment, it's about what's next, okay? And that's how my mind thinks. So I looked at it and I made the comparison, and I wrote about it, and I've spoken about it. I made the comparison of D-Day, like the D-Day invasion, right? So the American people, we attacked on D-Day. Here it is the day after, right? So D-Day +1, right? If you think about the Normandy invasion, D-Day +1, we were up on the cliffs of Normandy. We're breaking through the hedgerows. But we can't, it's a long way before we can declare victory over Europe, right? Still got bridge over the Remagen. You got the battle of, the Bastogne battle. I mean, you got all kinds of other things that are going to happen between the day of the victory, the beachhead, right? And now we got to get to a place where we can declare victory, right? And I don't personally believe that day will ever come. So my way of thinking, the way I look at things, you'll have these incremental victories, and you'll feel good about, we did this or we did that, and whatever laws passed, or the Supreme Court has a ruling like the Roe v. Wade ruling, which was a big deal. Everybody felt good about it. Those are big victories. But that's why I say that the nation is in a constant state of sacrifice. And so there's not really going to be a declaration of the victory over Europe or victory over Japan, to use that metaphor. It's constant. But what we can do, like, back to surfing, right? Back to physicality. This nation is in a pathetic state of health right now. Okay? Name one condition, and I'll give you the details of economically, politically, right? Militarily, information. If that's one area, that's an area where we actually have some strength, because there's been a rise of people because of things called free speech and the internet, and a couple of good people that have sort of flipped. Elon's flipped, So those are conditions of health as a nation, and we are weak. We're weak right now, and we have to kind of like you got to work out, right? The body's got to be worked out. That means America has to work out. And that means you need leaders who are going to be disciplined, and then they're going to drive this country to get stronger again. If we don't do that in these next couple of years, we're in trouble. That's why there's such an anxiety right now in this country. There's a huge anxiety. And part of the anxiety is to do something, to take action, right? And, because of where we were just at, Black Mountain Children's Home, I wrote one thing down, and it was while we were sitting in the office, right, with Jimmy. And for anybody that doesn't know about Black Mountain Children's Home, they need to. Unbelievable. What a talk about shining city on a hill. He said, and I wrote this down when we were wandering around here, he said, nobody cares what you say until your actions show how much you care.
Right.
And it's action that the American people want right now.
It definitely seems that way, and I definitely want to take the opportunity to cover one more topic, because I know our time is limited, but I think it builds on that. This confusion that we're in, everything seems chaotic. Well, at the same time, it seems like we are on a better trajectory. Like, we've had this cultural manipulation that has happened over the years. I was in the military came in '92, so I saw exactly what you're talking about. it feels like we are aware of that now. But now we have other crazy things like UAPs and drones over New Jersey.
Yeah.
We're having the government tell us it's hobbyist enthusiasts. Like, what do you make of that?
Yeah, I personally believe that it's that we're threatened right now by enemies. I do believe that we do have that there are probably some up there that are maybe they're counter drones, but I've been told by good people, and some maybe I'm speculating, but I'm also going based on what I have read, seen, heard, and been told by good people who are inside the government, that there is a threat that is posed against this country, and as it stands right now, it appears to be on both coasts. The one thing that I do know about drones, and I know a lot about drones, I've been dealing with drones since the mid-'80s. Okay, so I have a long, long history of unmanned aerial vehicles and drones, and in peacetime and in war, the development of them, the capabilities on them. The application of what they're capable of doing. The United States military has every capability to shut this whole thing down. The frequency spectrums that they operate on, we can control. We can shut them down, right? I am not for the talk about, well, people should just shoot them down, start shooting them down. That's wrong, because you're talking about shooting things down over populated areas. And you miss, a bullet goes up, bullet comes down. So we have to use good common sense. I do think that the American people should be like hugely upset at the government. I mean, the pathetic response by the spokesperson we were talking earlier about out of the Pentagon, going, well, you got to, if it was, if these are just drones, like kids' toys. And why is it classified?
Right.
Well, you got to go talk to Congress. I mean, we're not fools here as American citizens. So number one, the United States of America has the full capability to be able to do anything that they want with the frequency spectrum that those things are running on right now, and to be able to shut them all down immediately. And I mean, drop them right out of the sky within seconds. Okay, within seconds, if they want to do that. So there's something there. The other things are they looking for radioactive material? I mean, we're big boys and girls, and maybe there is concern that if they say in the northern New Jersey, New York area, we got concerns about dirty bombs. Whoa. So now what? Do the 23 million people in the metropolitan area of New York start unasked in the area and driving west? I mean,
if they need to, why aren't they doing it now?
That could be chaotic, right? Exactly. So just be honest with us, and let's quit the games, right? Because this is not a game. This is the lives of the American people, and we are sick and tired of the lack of transparency from the government. I understand classified things, and I understand sensitive things that need to be classified for purposes of, not giving away something that you might do against an enemy. I got that. But this is right here, right? So I honestly, I wish I were in charge. Sprinkle fairy dust over me, in 24 hours we'd have this shit fixed.
No.
Fixed.
Is there
but we're not right now, and we have another 33 days, and I think for everybody out there that watches this, well, the one thing that because people feel like, I don't know what to do. What can I do? If you can do nothing else, pray for that man that just won the election, that his safety, and frankly, the safety of his family members, okay? Right. So we always think about Trump, and of course, a couple of times, assassination attempts, but imagine if somebody went after his wife, his son, or sons, their family members, right? I mean, you never think about that. We always think about the guy and he's protected under this bubble of security. But there's a lot of other people that are in his life that he loves, and everybody knows those are targets as well. All of that is on the table right now, every bit of it. And so I appreciate the fact that he's down at Mar-a-Lago, that he's generally doing what he can do. He can't fight from a foxhole. He's got to fight from a standing position, because that's what we want our leaders to do. And frankly, as he moves into the presidency, knock on wood that he gets there, he's got to be ready to take action on day one, because that's what the American people want. They are listening to what everybody says, but they care mostly about what leaders do. And I think that's kind of where I'm at.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing your wisdom.
It's great.
With us
Great.
General
Awesome.
Flynn.
Thanks for traveling around with us today.
Absolutely. And for everybody else, if you have not yet seen the Flynn movie, it is available for rent or purchase on Amazon Prime. I highly recommend that you take the time to watch that movie if you've not yet. It definitely adds a lot of context.
You can go to flynnmovie.com,
Flynn
and it's easy to get. It's great.
All right. Thanks again, General.
Super.
Appreciate
All right,
you.
brother. Thank you.
Take care. This has been Gaslighting the Warfighter. I'm your host, Will Wisner. The Grunstyle Foundation continues fighting for those who have served. Support our mission at grunstylefoundation.org/donate. Stay strong, stay vigilant, and keep moving forward with purpose.